I'm very proud that Aging with Dignity provides 5 wishes. We give it out free to those who can't pay for it. It's been a useful tool to help families plan for and discuss end-of-life care. One of the issues, of course, that's beginning to get more and more momentum in the world, particularly as the age wave spreads across the globe, is the issue of assisted suicide and euthanasia, and what's now being referred to euphemistically as medical aid in dying. This idea of accelerating death, of the idea that it can be humanitarian to provide intentionally a lethal dose of an opioid that will hasten an individual's death and relieve suffering. What do you personally think? I'm curious. I haven't asked you this question, but what do you think of assisted suicide, euthanasia, and this medical aid in dying movement?
It's a big question. I think it goes to the heart of our difficulties with suffering. I think we should steer into that more, how we manage suffering, how we are in our witnessing of suffering. I understand people's desire to be in control of their suffering or somebody else's. I think that's a healthy human impulse. We can't bear it. It's awful. At the same time, part of being alive, part of living a real life, is bearing suffering, is bearing the unbearable.
And it's not just your own suffering. Sometimes it's even harder to witness someone you love suffering.
I think a lot of people would say that. Certainly, to go through something is one thing. To watch it and not be able to do anything about it, I think, is one of the most horrible experiences we experience as human beings. It's also one of the experiences that tells us we are human beings. We are powerless in the face of this. And that's a very important corrective. We can't fix everything. We can't save everybody. We're not in charge of everything. The ego needs to know that. It needs to have these experiences. That's what kind of tempers us. That's where we're on the border of psychology and spirituality, right there. Yeah.
So this mystery of suffering, which has, of course, been a timeless concern. Certain faith traditions, Buddha said to live is to suffer. I remember Viktor Frankl's book, Man's Search for Meaning, and his discussion of the value of suffering, the importance of embracing suffering and understanding it and processing it. Obviously, in an age given to comfort and entertainment and avoidance of suffering at all costs,
right.
We've lost this awareness. It almost looks like suffering now is arbitrary and that it's singling out people. And that, of course, the poor bear the brunt of this because often their suffering's unaccompanied, unattended. How do you get a society to be willing to discuss this meaning of suffering and relevance of it, as opposed to the quicker solutions that might want to just eliminate it as quickly as possible?
And I think those quicker solutions and the desire to get rid of it are a symptom that we are all feeling a little dehumanized. If there's pain there, we want it to go away. Ours and anybody else's, That's a symptom of our dehumanization, I think, the human encounter. How do we get a society to talk about it? I think we have to share stories of the gifts of suffering. There are many gifts and graces that come from it. People experience this all the time. The death of a loved one, or a turbulent period in their life, or the thing that happens that should have never happened, and it happens, and guess what? You're okay. And you deepen as a result of it. And many good things come into the world as a result of how you have suffered. I'm not saying that's easy. I'm not saying everybody does it. But it's certainly a part of our potential, and it's human beings at their best. If we're to get rid of it, where do we go from that?
But some might say, well, that's fine if that's how you want to manage suffering. But I have the right to manage my suffering and my exit from this world the way I want to manage it. What's the effect of an individual choice to hasten their own death, whether it's a suicide, someone up on the ledge jumping, or whether it's someone in the deathbed that's asking to be administered a lethal dose of an opioid? What is the effect on the society, or is there any?
It's a great question. It's a big question. I think that if we're okay with that, and if that doesn't bother us, and don't get me wrong, I understand it. I don't think we should judge the part of us that says, I want to be in control of this. That's a human instinct too, to want to be in control of it. But I think it's a very slippery slope. And if we say that we are okay with it and it is the right thing, this is the right thing, I think we are in that very dangerous territory where we're saying that this unique, unrepeatable life is not a sacred thing. It's an object, and its time is done. It's expired. It's an object that is expired. Now, the whole point of something like life review, which is at the opposite end of that spectrum, is to say, this is your precious life. Tell me all the important bits about it. Share them with me. I'm curious. I want to know. And I'm going to be impacted by that. And that the other person can see that impact in my face, in my being. And something very real is exchanged between the two of us. There's a bioresonance. They are affected by that. I am altered by that, by their life.
Right.
You know? If we say to somebody, you're going to suffer and we should just minimize that, that's at the opposite end of that spectrum. That's the opposite of what I'm talking about.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, that, of course, the no man is an island, this awareness of our connectivity with those around us. Mm-hmm. I know that when I lived and worked in the AIDS home that Mother Teresa opened in Washington, it was funny to see the where you would think would be a place of despair, discouragement, depression. There was so much beauty and joy as the sisters were with individuals who came to deeper awareness that their life was a gift, that they weren't a burden. So often we send these messages when our loved ones are sick that you're becoming a burden to me. Mm-hmm. The less that we make that message about burden and more recognition that they are a gift to me. And yes, that brings responsibilities that may be painful, difficult responsibilities, and it may be painful for you, but you're not going to be left alone. I watched in The Gift of Peace, of course it's always easier to kill someone than care for them. And so, especially as they're lingering and you're talking at the end of life, and that, what I always felt was the focus should be on, let's not talk about, yes, assisted suicide, no assisted suicide. Let's talk about managing pain, yes, listening to patient wishes, giving them rights to discuss. If we get into the polarizing argument that we've seen at the beginning of life on abortion, where you see the two voices of this debate about my own autonomy and right, and versus this is a life and this is a baby and you must bear this baby. If we get that dynamic at the end of life, it's going to be equally polarizing and divisive. Why can't the discussion be about what Five Wishes has tried to do, is to help people manage their pain, but also recognize the societal issue that if we start taking actions with the intention of ending an individual's life, that this is a slippery slope.
This is a slippery slope.
So I think we both agree on that. So then the question is, well, then how do you avoid that polarizing division that may be coming now as baby boomers become into their 70s and 80s?
Well, I mean, I would hope that that's going to come through practical things like life review, or an understanding that your life is a sacred thing. I mean, I would hope that it's going to come through things like that. The other thing I would just say on that, though, I mean, the fact that this seems to be a desire for more and more people, maybe that they could be in charge of their own death, I see that also as symptomatic of them experiencing inside of them that this is how society views them anyhow. I should just end it because society doesn't see any value in me anyhow. It's not just about the eliminating of suffering, I don't think. I don't want to suffer, I want to end it. I think they're also responding to the way society experiences them and treats them.
That their life has no value at that point.
Yeah, I don't think it's a spoken thing.
And what I thought when you said that too is that sense of I want control is also in response to them feeling powerless, that they often aren't consulted by physicians, that they aren't told what their options are. A lot of times they're sent through these rigorous, painful regimens of chemotherapy that had next to no chance of success, and no one ever briefed them in advance, here are the side effects, here.
But people were making money.
Right, and money was made in the system while their care was being provided, and not inferring that means bad will on anyone's part. No. It certainly is a call to corrective action, that we give more of a patient voice, which is why I felt Five Wishes gave people a better sense of leveling the playing field, because they feel it's such a disadvantage. You got health insurers, they don't understand all these applications and forms, all the depersonalizing coding of their conditions. And then you have physicians who are too busy and are being pressured not to spend time with patients.
Right.
And then you have nurses that are stretched thin in healthcare settings and
Right.
others. And so they feel powerless.
Right.
And this is their one life. And so then often the easy solution is we'll get it over with.
This is it.
And why not spend our efforts to empower them? So yeah, that's why 5 wishes. Any last advice for individuals who are thinking, well, why bother filling out 5 wishes? Is it going to really matter? Is it going to affect my health care? How do I get people to even pay attention to my comfort and how I want to be treated and what I want my loved ones to know? Is this just a tree falling in the wilderness? Why should someone bother to go through the exercise of filling out 5 wishes?
The first thing I would say on that is to do something like this is to put a stake in the ground and say, my life is important, and when I leave this life it will be important. And what that helps you do is live well now. That psychologically enables you, and spiritually of course, to live well now. So I think everybody should do it. That's what I would say on that. The second thing that comes to my mind when you say that is I think we're just not great at death anymore. Which is funny because we will all die. You know, historically, going way back, people were good at death. There were beautiful rituals around it. People spent a lot of time preparing for it. They had money set aside because they wanted the celebrations to be in a certain...
Irish wake?
They would plan for the celebrations while they were alive because they knew just how they wanted them to be. They planned for them almost like you'd plan for a wedding or a birth, you know? And they were marking that, like what people used to do, civilizations used to be better at, was they were able to feel the mixed emotions, the paradoxes that existed at key points. We don't do that anymore. For us, death is all bad. You know, it wasn't for previous civilizations. Death was good and bad. There was weeping and there was celebration at the same time. I see this as a celebration of life, really, you know?
And a preparation.
And a preparation. It's a good thing, you know? Helps us to bear it, also helps us to celebrate it, you know?
I hope that's the takeaway message, that 5 wishes brings peace of mind. It helps people grapple with the fear of death. It also helps them get the kind of care they want or don't want during times of serious illness. And it also becomes, in effect, a last will and testament of their heart and soul. What did my life mean? And I think all of that is a legacy that everyone has within reach, and Aging with Dignity hopes to provide.